Good evening. I lost myself. This happens every single week. We got to figure out what's going on here. Good evening. Welcome back. It's another Friday night on the couch with Dr. Kim. I'm working on the couch. I'm working on the couch. I keep hearing it. They're like, you keep inviting us to meet you on the couch, but we don't see the couch. So I got to work on the couch. But tonight, on the couch, on the pretend couch, right? So I need you to use your imagination. On the pretend couch, we're talking about compatibility or alignment. Which one is the most important when trying to solidify a successful relationship? Which one? Is it compatibility? And of course, you know I've got to define it for you. Is it compatibility or is it alignment? And the reason why, I always have a reason why I choose these topics is that word alignment is popping up a lot in my news feed. Now, I know all of our news feeds are different, right? Your algorithm is kind of based on what interests you and what you kind of click on, right? Excuse my noise here. Preparing libations. I didn't get a chance to do that before I logged on. So bear with me. Pour yourself something because this is going to be a good one tonight. But that word alignment is showing up a lot, right? In my newsfeed, a lot. And people, oh, I just need someone who I'm aligned with. It's all about alignment. And I'm convinced, like every other trend I see on social media, people don't know what you're talking about. They're just repeating what it is they've heard other people say, all of the relationship experts, which I do not consider myself to be one. I'm a relationship educator. And there's a difference. There's a difference. I'm always here to bring up topics to help you do some thinking. To do some thinking. That's right. I want you to know why you believe what you believe. Hey, Rossi. It's Rossi in Maryland. Good evening. I always want you to be aware of why you're doing what you're doing. And when you open your mouth, why are you saying what you're saying? We regurgitate far too much of what we see and what we hear on social media in particular, right? And so for those of you who have given up Facebook, the same thing is happening on Instagram. The same thing is happening on TikTok. And most definitely the same thing is happening in these dating streets. Ask me how I know. So compatibility, right? And we've heard people talk about compatibility a lot. You see that if you've participated in online dating, I'm looking for someone who's compatible with me. What does that mean? What does that mean? And so by the end of our time together, here's the teacher in me. I have to give you the objectives. By the end of our time together tonight, I hope that you have a better understanding of what compatibility is and the role that compatibility and alignment play in solidifying a relationship. What's the point of having one if you're not going to stay together? I probably should have had Al Green playing in the background tonight. Yeah, that probably would have been a good choice. But we hear this talked about ad nauseum, right? One of the things I noticed is when I did my series on marriages or marriage matters, and I had 5 couples that joined me across the month of May and June who had all been together 10 years or more. I think I might have had 1 or 2 couples that were only married a shorter period of time than that, but they had really great stories of how they got together. But at any rate, the common thread with those stories was compatibility and alignment. And in some cases, they evolved simultaneously. But quite a few of the couples, it was compatibility first. Compatibility first, and then the alignment came. So we're going to unpack both of them because that's what I like doing. When you think about compatibility, stay with me for a minute. Compatibility really speaks to goodness of fit. kind of your yin and your yang. So if you get a visual of the yin and the yang symbols, what do? They fit together. They're different shapes, but they fit together. There's no space in between the yin and the yang. They complete the shape, right? It's a circle, and you got one wave in this way, one wave in that way, but together they make a complete circle, right? Which has no end. So that kind of speaks to infinity and unity. If you look at geometry, complementary angles, same thing. There's different sets, different shapes, but they fit together to support a structure, right? They work together for an expected end to keep the structure intact. So compatibility, if you want to think about it, a word picture would be that goodness of fit, how two entities that are very different can come together, not struggle against one another, but kind of lean in, right? Kind of lean in. And definitely that's a goal for me in my next relationship is compatibility. Is compatibility, which doesn't speak to you liking the same things. And I'm going to get into it in a minute. Doesn't mean you like the same things. It doesn't mean that you're even alike. For example, really great relationship I had. And one of the first things I said about this man was he reminded me of myself. I said, wow, he's like the male version of me. So I was like, this is definitely my person. And I apologize to my daughter for using that, that phrase. She hates therapy. My person. It's like, be specific, right? But I was like, oh, this is going to be great because he's the male version of me. Sometimes that doesn't work. It doesn't need to be two of the same. If you ever ordered something, it's like, why would I think about sweet and sour, how that works together, right? They're different, but when you put them together, it tastes so much better, right? So anyway, that's the first descriptor of compatibility is the ease in which two people come together and complement each other. Here's some definitions, right? Just in general compatibility, because we know compatibility matters, right? In any relationship, working relationships, friendship, even family members, right? When you see different siblings in a big family, certain ones will get along with others, and not, it's the compatibility. So, compatibility is the capability of existing or performing in harmonious or congenial combination. Look at that. If you think about harmony, right? Those of you who love R&B, and you know I do. You think about harmony, what is those different sounds, different notes, different kinds of voices coming together seamlessly to produce wonderful music, music that is pleasing to the ears. Okay. Or, and I really like this part of this definition, it's a feeling of sympathetic understanding. Compatibility is a feeling of sympathetic understanding. I would have liked to replace the sympathy with empathy, which I think is super important in any relationship, but definitely speaks to compatibility. If I'm trying to move with you, right, harmoniously, I've got to think about how you move, number one. I have to think about what you need, number two. And I have to think about what matters to you in order for us to move with some compatibility. So I like that. This other one says compatibility has to do with getting along. Compatibility also speaks to chemistry, which is that harmony piece again. And chemistry is something that people struggle to describe, but when you feel it, you know it. It's the intangible part of compatibility. There's some folks, it has nothing to do with looks. I was just watching, I hope my cousin pops in, my sister cousin, Kanisha. Hope she pops in. But we were watching, what was it? Not Love at First Sight. Was it Love at First Sight? It might have been. Where the couples, yeah, where they meet at the altar for the first time. And This came up several times that there was one couple on there. I mean, just cute as they can be, gorgeous. And they never consummated the marriage because they said it was no chemistry there. It was nothing between them, nothing that clicked, that intangible. There was nothing that was drawing them to close the space between them. So it has nothing to do with looks. Chemistry is either there or it's not there. You can't invent it, you can't create it, you can cultivate it, right? So if it's there, you can increase the odds of it expanding. But if it ain't there, it ain't there. It has nothing to do with looks. So what does compatibility look like? Positive interactions. So the clients I talk to, when they describe somebody they're compatible with, they're like, every time we're together, it's just great. We can be doing something planned, or we could be doing nothing at all. And it's positive. It's great. Like, I'd rather have them in my space than them not being there. So them being there matters. Hey, there she is. Okay, I'm talking about our show. And so it's positive interactions. Positive interactions. Everything we do. Married at first sight. Thank you. I'm over here. Love at first sight. Married at first sight. They got a free plug off of me. And so the positive interaction, sense of humor. Sense of humor is a part of compatibility. And I know this matters because have you ever heard or had someone crack jokes? And this happened on the show too, because if you remember, people can crack jokes, and if you don't get their sense of humor, you either think they are corny, you're a cornball, or you might be offended. Sometimes there's things that people joke about. It's not funny to everyone else. So compatibility kind of counts on us having a similar or an acceptable sense of humor that's alike, that meshes. You crack a joke and I actually think it's funny. Or maybe the way you do things, right? I think it's funny. So positive interactions is a part of compatibility. Physical attraction, we touched on. Yeah, it helps. And this is talked about a lot. Who was that? The guy that died? That he was some relationship guru, Kevin Samuels. He talked about that, right? That if you're a 5, you shouldn't expect a 10. So if you're a 5, best you can do, maybe better than you, is to get a 6. Isn't that horrible? But believe it or not, there's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. Do you notice? Look at couples, and I've looked at couples in my family. I've even looked at couples I've been a part of, right? A partner. Are both partners sometimes equally as beautiful physically? Or is there one that's slightly more pleasing to the eye and the other one's just kind of okay? Think about that. And I've seen that a lot. Very seldom do you see two Ugg muffins or two really gorgeous people. Very seldom. Usually there's some kind of balance. One is great to look at, and one is, personality plus. Very seldom do you see both people, but it works, right? Their physical attraction works. Again, it's the yin to the yang. It's something that they have that works with what you have, even physically. What about honesty? And somebody, don't laugh. It's true. What's up, Dwayne? Hey, Kevin. Yeah, that Kevin Samuels. God rest his soul, but he had a lot of toxic stuff, a lot of toxic things going on in his conversations. When I posted this earlier, was it compatibility or alignment? And I know Bobby's not going to come on here, but Bobby said honesty. And I was like, that wasn't one of the choices. It was compatibility. It was compatibility or alignment, but she said honesty. And believe it or not, that was on my list. Compatibility, or one part of being compatible, are people's ability or willingness to be honest. And I put honesty and transparency, and they're different. The guys from the cave, and I'm gonna send them this link. They talked about it on their show a couple weeks ago. The difference between honesty and transparency. There's a difference, but compatibility is linked to people's willingness to be honest. There are some people that don't feel like certain things should be disclosed, even to an intimate partner. Or they feel like that's just something you should know. That's not something I should have to tell you. There's also some folks who are somewhat passive aggressive, right? So they can't be straightforward and honest with you. So they drop hints. They don't know how to be forthright. But true compatibility is when you can be both honest and transparent. So, what's the difference? Honesty is when you disclose everything that needs to be shared when you're asked. Transparency is when you offer information that's not necessarily directly solicited. So, for example, honesty is, let me put it in reverse. Transparency is, we're about to go to an outing, and I know one of my exes is going to be there, and I tell you up front, hey, babe, I heard that this guy I dated is going to be at this event. So I want you to know if he walks up to me, that's who he is. Haven't seen him, haven't talked to him, and anytime we don't have any contact, but somebody mentioned it to me because they wanted me to know. That's transparency. Honesty is showing up to the event and seeing the person and then telling your spouse or your partner, or if they ask you, that person seemed like somebody you knew or you were close to, what's up with that? And you say, yeah, that was somebody I used to date. It was somebody I used to kick it with. That's honesty. But you have some people that don't play that game. You have one person who, I'm an open book. I'm going to tell you everything I think you need to know so you can feel safe and secure in this space between us. And there's some people that want to play that game. I'm only going to tell you what you need to know. And I'm only going to give that up if I have to. It's not going to work. Those two people have to have similar views on how honest and transparent we're going to be with each other. And in my humble opinion, as your best friend, Dr. Kim, on a Friday night, I tell people honesty and transparency is worth gold. That's the investment in that relationship. Nobody should be able to surprise your partner about you. They should know you better than anybody else. And of course, a lot of it comes from observation. Most definitely, right? Time spent, deep conversations shared, absolutely. But some of it should not be a guessing game. Some of that information needs to come from you directly. So in order to be compatible with someone, you need to have similar views about honesty and transparency. Mutual support. Ooh, this is a sticky one. I feel the men in here about to answer about this one. And I see this complained about a lot on social media, where you see one partner giving, 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 and the other partner taking, 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 taking. Where's the mutual support? Here's a question that comes up, and I'm probably going to step on some toes here, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's what I do, right? How many times have I shown up for events and that person's spouse is nowhere in the room? Nowhere in the room. But when that said spouse has an event or something they're committed to, their partner is there. In order to have compatibility, there needs to be mutual support. Now, the support doesn't have to be in the same way. So maybe I'm judging from the outside, and I apologize if it appears that way, but it's a pattern I see. And some folks will sit at home and their partner is out socializing or whatever it is they do. There's some people, I promise you, that folks don't even know they're married. Person is invisible on social media, the person is invisible on the streets. There's some people, I promise you, I did not find out were married until the person died. That should never be the case. And you know why? Because that support was not there. That support was not there. I don't condone cheating, but that's also the bedrock of cheating, men and women. There's somebody in that space that you should be feeling because somebody is supporting and encouraging your partner. And you're not doing it. Sometimes it's not about you showing up, but what was the saying? And you all help me out. I know you all are old enough. I'm looking at who's in the chat. You all are old enough to know this. But I remember older women saying, never let your man leave the house hungry. Right? Never let him leave the house and make sure you fix him a sandwich and a sandwich. You know me, give him a taco before he leaves. You'll catch that in the morning. Okay. But if nothing else, I'm supporting you, right? Even from a distance. So I'm not saying it's about your partner always being physically present, but where's the support? Where's the encouragement for what they do, what they're interested in, or what it is they want to pursue? I've seen that with couples on the good and the bad. The couples who support each other. In fact, one of the couples that I had on that series, in fact, is Sherry not here? Thomas Spann, God rest his soul. When he was on, he talked about him and his wife agreeing when they first got married, how they were going to manage both of them pursuing their dreams. And their dreams included going to school. So they talked about how are we going to do this, especially once they started having children. And it was like, hey, when you're in school, I'm going to do this to support you so you can get to your goal. And likewise, when it's my turn, I know you got my back. That's compatibility. But it also speaks to alignment. And I don't want to get there too fast because a couple who's willing to give that mutual support is also probably a couple who has talked about the direction they're going in. But I don't want to rush too fast. I only got a few more about compatibility. Effective communication and conflict resolution. I don't even want to talk about communication because, again, I think that's one that's over discussed but not understood. But conflict resolution is the one because you're going to disagree. There's no relationship where you're not going to disagree. That's married, that's dating, that's family, that's children and parents. But the compatibility factor is, excuse me, how quickly and how willing are you able to resolve the conflict? Are you able to sit that problem in the middle of the table and say, how are we going to deal with that? Not how I'm going to deal with you, or if you would just stop doing this. Right? So compatibility are two for oh God, there was said the definition of a healthy relationship is the companion or the combination of two forgivers. That's the key. That's the key. So if you can see the problem as the problem and not your partner as the problem, there's some level of compatibility there. You're like, we're more important than anything that can happen between us. The us. And you all know I talk about that us. I want a us so bad. So bad. Right? But that problem is never going to be more important than our relationship. So whatever it takes for us to resolve this so we can go back to our regularly scheduled program, that's a couple that is compatible. Compatible. Acceptance. Acceptance is a huge part of compatibility. Remember when I said at the beginning, it's not about people being alike, it's not people being the same, but it is about acceptance. If your partner is a weirdo, and that's on my list, I said, I want my own personal weirdo, right? Somebody that nobody else understands but me. And when that man does something weird, I can laugh about it. Be like, that's my baby. Ain't he crazy? He's just crazy. And so that's a huge part of compatibility. And you've seen couples like that, right? You're like, how in the world did they get together? You know how? They accepted each other. What seemed strange on the outside wasn't strange to them. Or if it was, they were willing to accept it. They're like, that's just who they are. And me expecting them to change that, I'm going to end up being disappointed. So, acceptance. Here's the big one, and this is going to take us right into alignment. And this is similar values. And this, to me, is probably the biggest part of compatibility are two people that have similar values. They kind of view the world in the same way, in a similar way. Same means identical. Similar means mirroring, right? So there's some similarities, there are some likenesses, but we're not cookie cutter or carbon copies of each other. But we have to have similar values. It's very hard to be with someone who doesn't have similar ideas, for example, about family. And I've talked about that on this podcast many times about there are folks who, on paper, look like they would be really great matches for me, but they were not family people. And anyone who knows me knows I'm 10 toes down with the Kings and the Garretts and the Barbers. Love y'all. Okay. Those are my folks. So my kids are my friends. My parents live right down the street. Those old people, love them to pieces. Okay. And so there's a certain period of time or a certain amount of time I'm going to want to spend with my family. And if that person sees that as competition for their time, we're not compatible. And that's what I found out. So having similar views about family, I think this also goes back to acceptance though too, right? Because maybe you're not a family person, but if you're really into your partner and they are, you're going to find a way to accept that and say, you know what? I could care less about being at my family function, but if that's how you get down, I'm with you. I'll roll. You rock, I roll. All right. Similar values, similar values. I've also seen the family thing work out where maybe that person didn't have a positive family dynamic, but with their partner, they want to create that. They want to create the family that maybe they never had. So it's still similar views, right? They value family, they just didn't have that experience, but they know it's important. Work ethic. This is another one that gets me. I can't stand, and this is this is Dr. Kim just talking to you as Kim. I can't stand a lazy man. Can't do it. And by lazy, I mean just no gumption, as the old people used to say, no motivation, self motivation. You're just complacent with the bare minimum. Now, I'm not talking about even hustling, right? Because that's a whole nother level of work ethic. Everybody doesn't have that. But a work ethic or a strong work ethic, meaning you appreciate working for things, earning things. You're not somebody who's going to cheat the clock, try to do the bare minimum and still get paid. That's not sexy. I don't like that. So, but if you're that person, you need to find somebody like you. So if you're a clock thief, find a clock thief. You need some compatibility. But that matters, right? Are you a hard worker? Do you think that we should work for things? That's compatibility. Finances. And we know that beyond sex, the next issue that breaks up most marriages, finances. Now, granted, the complementary angles again, most couples you have a saver and a spender, right? That's pretty standard. But we still have to have similar values about what's important. What are we doing with our money? What are we spending it on? If you're the spender, what are we saving it on? So give you an example. My ex-husband, he was the saver, I was the spender, guilty. But our values were similar in that we both wanted to pour into our home. So that's something that we had compatibility about. We didn't really do a lot of traveling. We really didn't do a lot or spend a lot of money on clothes and things like that. But we spent a lot of money on our home, right? And entertaining at home and things like that. So even though our how we manage money was different, what we spent it on or what we saved it on was very similar. The social life again, social compatibility. Now, I mentioned that around mutual support, but I'm also telling you it's a marriages on the rocks because people did not resolve their different levels of sociability. So, one person who's a social butterfly and the other person who's a homebody. How do you balance that? How do you get to a point of acceptance? It's important for compatibility. And somebody real close to me, if he's watching this, he'll know this is his story. His previous wife, she did an excellent job of pretending to be a social butterfly all while they dated. And knowing deep down in her soul, she hated that. The minute they jumped the broom, she stayed in the house and never came out. She might still be in the house. They've been divorced now almost a year. So people pretend, but compatibility speaks to that. And again, do we have to do everything together? No, but it might be coming to a point of acceptance. Acceptance, right? We don't can't do everything together. I don't even want to do everything with you. But have we communicated that there's certain events are very important to me? I really don't want to go to something like that without you. Okay, I can do that. Or could we just say no to some invitations and just stay home and be here together? Those are conversations. That's communication, people. But similar views on how we're going to socialize. Politics, that's a tough one right now. It's a lot of people. If you're not sure, better watch their social media page. What are they saying about politics or not saying? Think about it. Religion, similar views on religion. Did I say the same denomination or the same religion? Absolutely not. I've seen some interfaith couples be very successful, right? Very long marriages because they have a similar view that there is a higher power. Or maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Or acceptance. Acceptance. If you choose to worship or not to worship, I'm good. But we have what? Similar views on that there are basic right and wrong, which is really the root of religion, right? And spirituality. There's wisdom, and then there's what ethics involved in that. And so that's the compatibility piece. And those are things that people usually don't talk about. Think about all the things I just said that compatibility relies on. And most folks don't touch those until what? Until there's a problem or until after they're together. These are the hard things you need to talk about before you decide to sign up, whether that's a commitment or it is marriage. These are the things you need to find out how that person really deals. Okay, how they really feel about stuff before it happens. That's some other wisdom that my mother gave me. And they're in what? Next month, it'll be 61 years. She said, always know what you're going to do about something before it happens. So that requires you having some conversations about things as they occur, as you see them in the news, as you see them in other people's relationships, as you see things on social media. I think social media gives you a lot of things to talk about, opportunities to pick their brain and see how they really function. And then, of course, look at how they deal with other people. So, somebody who tells you they're honest, but you see them lying to family members, you're showing me who you are. Believe it. Believe it. All right. So all of these things, right, especially those values, is where alignment starts to overlap. And alignment speaks to direction. Alignment. So if you think about, again, here's a visual picture. If two things are aligned, or for the guys here, when you get your tires rotated and aligned, what are they doing? They're making sure that those treads are going in the same direction. And when they are, what do? They produce a better ride, better gas performance in your vehicle. Same thing in a relationship. When we're aligned, we can go further and faster if we're moving in the same direction. That's the alignment piece. Some people think alignment is compatibility. So, compatibility is kind of the how you think about your life, and alignment is how you move through your life. Where are you headed? What are you actively doing to get there? So here's a conversation that comes up a lot, and this is not even in my notes, about women who say, but older women who say they're not interested in building a man. If he's not already put together, then forget it. I'm not trying to do a build a man. And I can understand sisters saying that, especially if they've built a man from scratch before. But I always challenge this by saying, if we say that people are always living and evolving as long as they're alive, then it's quite possible you can meet a man or a woman in their 50s, even in their 60s, that are recreating themselves or adding other layers to themselves. Here's the caveat: people who are walking that plan out, not people who are just talking about champagne dreams and caviar imagination, right? But I can get down with somebody who is saying, I'm going back to school to do this, and you're able to tell me, oh, okay, so when are you going, or what program? And they can say, oh, these are the schools I've looked at, blah blah blah. They have some information. But it's one day. You older than water talking about one day. I don't have time for that. So I can't even lead you to water, not trying to make you drink, but I can walk alongside you, right? Alignment as you're walking out your life's journey. Okay, so two people moving in the same direction, does the big picture of their lives line up? Super important for the old people. Okay, and I'm finding this a lot, right? Again, 50 and 60 crowd, people who are retired, there are different levels to retirement. So I know some folks who are retired and they just waiting to die. Like, I'm not working, and so that's it. And then there's some folks who are retired who are like, wow, now is the time for me to live my life and do some things I couldn't do when I was working. So alignment looks like finding somebody who is trying to finish out their sunset years a particular way. Otherwise, you're going to end up bumping heads, and it's going to do what? Impact your compatibility. Who just came in here? Hey, Dr. Liz, good evening. Good evening. I owe you about 12 phone calls. I'm in so much trouble. I love you. I'm glad you love me still. So, stagnation versus evolution. We see this again in younger couples, especially now, right? In this, what generation are we in? Is it the Z's? We're on Generation Z now, with the failure to launch generation taking forever for them to leave home. This is a big issue with couples in the 20s and 30s. There's some folks who are on the trajectory to begin their lives independently. And then there's a camp of folks who are, I guess, eventually I'll leave home, or maybe my parents will die and leave me their house. They're in no rush. So, this reminds me of what was it, the couple on Married at First Sight? There was one guy on there, if you all haven't watched it, we were watching season 18, and he lived at home with his parents. Now, his story was he was there because he was saving money. He said the job that he worked so many hours, he was basically just coming home, plopping down on the couch. He was like, it didn't make sense for him to pay rent somewhere to just sleep on the couch. So he decided to move back home and stay with his parents. But then he gets on this show because he said he hasn't been successful in dating. I wonder how many possible women did he lose bringing them to the basement of his mama's house at 30 something years old? You want to guess? Can you imagine? Because he told the girl he was married to, all right, that's the show where they meet at the altar, right? So he told the girl that he was married to that he was actively dating, like he had brought girls home. And she was horrified, like, you brought them here in this basement with his kegometer. He had something look like something college boys have drinking out of. And it's like, are you serious right now? So I wonder how many people did he miss because they weren't aligned. They were like, and nobody heard him talk about a plan. Now the girl he's with now did eventually ask him, what is your plan? How long do you expect to stay here in your parents' basement? And then he shared his plan. But I would think if you had some self-awareness that you would have led with that. That goes back to honesty and transparency. Because I would think most people would view that as something unattractive, right? That I live at home at 30 something years old. Yeah, David. I was trying not to say his name. But they live at home. You seem like you would lead with that. Hey, I'm just here for a few months trying to stack some money, blah, blah, blah. That you would lead with that. But the fact is, hey, like, this is my humble abode. Come on, sit on my little sunk in mattress. And the girl's not supposed to say anything? Are you serious? No. So, alignment. Alignment looks like this 5 areas, and then I'm going to get off of here because we had a whole discussion that we have to have about married at first sight. Intellectual alignment matters. Intellectual alignment matters. Let me sit there for a minute because I think you probably think you know where I'm going, and I'm not. Intellectual alignment has nothing to do with intellectual attainment or academic attainment, meaning and your intellect is not linked to how many letters are behind your name or what school you've gone to, etc. Some of the smartest people I know do not have degrees or advanced degrees. My father is one of them. People think that he's the professor in the family. People just assume he has a doctorate because of how well read and erudite he speaks. But he's not. But how about him and my mother are intellectually compatible? Meaning there's always something they can chop it up and talk about. And if they don't know something about a certain topic, they're going to consult their resources to get a better understanding or to get a better example. That's intellectual compatibility. That I can talk to you on the same level. We don't have to be interested in the same things, and God knows they're not always talking about the same things. But the fact that they value knowledge, they value finding out, they value speaking from a factual point of view and not just their opinions, there's some compatibility there. But I know some people that I've met some men who are like, I don't read, I don't go to school anymore. And they chalk it up to, oh, that's that teacher stuff. Oh, you trying to give me homework? Because maybe I'll ask, wow, did you see? I wonder is that I think I'm gonna see if I can find an article about that and send it to you. I'm not trying to do no homework. What is it? A quiz at the end? And that's a sign for me that we're not intellectually compatible. Not to say the man wasn't smart, okay? Because I don't think I've dated any dummies, but they just had a different view on what that looks like. The alignment isn't there. I'm done with school. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm gonna keep anyway. Emotional alignment. Emotional alignment. Wouldn't that be compatibility? Nope. I have some people who talk about emotions as, again, the stagnation versus evolution. That's just who I am. They're just gonna have to accept me. Nobody has to accept you as you are. What about growing? I remember Ali saying, if you're the same man at 40 that you were at 20, right? Something's really wrong. You've lost time. You've wasted time. Nobody should be sorting out problems or rationalizing things in the same way that they did when they were 20 years old. But you have some people like that. And so then again, we're talking about alignment is the direction for a relationship. If one partner is still growing in that way, maybe they're going to therapy, maybe they got a life coach, maybe they read self-help books, and one person is content to stay the way they are, they're going to grow apart. That's the lack of alignment. But if both people realize I need to keep evolving in terms of my feelings and how I deal with you and others, somebody's going to get left behind. Somebody's going to get left behind. So emotional alignment is key. Those couples that I talked to said they didn't grow at the same rate, but they continued to grow. Reverend William Marcus Small, my brother in Norfolk, Virginia, who wrote a book, Becoming Married. That's one of the themes throughout that book, is how as each person continues to evolve and change, that marriage changes. Marriage is not a destination, right? It's a journey. So that wedding is the destination. We got to the wedding, but now that marriage is something we've got to continue to walk out. So if you're still, and men tend to think emotionally, before I move on to the next thing, men tend to not want a woman to change. They're like, man, why can't she still be the girl I fell in love with? And women tend to always want their man to change, right? If I just love him, if I just show him some other things, then he could be. So they marry potential, then wonder why they're disappointed. And men marry this girl at a certain age and think she's not going to change, and they become disappointed. So emotionally, we have to be willing to evolve and have some kind of alignment in terms of our emotions. Vocationally, this is a sticky one too. This is a sticky one. Again, I don't think you need to be in the same industry, but you need to have similar views or a trajectory about your work life. So, for example, one person who believes in entrepreneurship and the other person who believes you just get a good government job and you stay there. So if they're not heading in the same direction, which maybe the big idea is financial security, but we see different ways of getting there, there's going to be some problems. So the alignment vocationally, what are we doing these jobs for? What is the expected end? How important is my work life to my life, right? It kind of goes back to the compatibility around work ethic, but most definitely, why are we working these jobs? Are we working until we get to this advanced age so we can retire? Are we working to retire, or are we working to retire? So vocationally, we need to have some alignment. We need to have some alignment. Why are we doing what we're doing, and how are we doing it? Okay. So for example, I know some folks, and I met some men recently who all they know is work. They've retired and picked up another job. Why? You just told me you have two pensions. Yeah, well, I just need something to do, with myself. And it was like, oh my, I'm trying to stop doing all of this so I can do only the things that matter to me, only the things that bring me joy. So I was like, I don't think that alignment is there. But you enjoy yourself, working yourself into the grave. All right, physically and sexually. Sexual alignment. I could do a whole show on this one. What do I mean by that? Some people view sex as something they do for the other person. This is not compatibility, and I'm going somewhere. Some people view sex as communication. There's things I can say in that bedroom I can't say to you face to face. Alignment, trajectory. Some people see sexuality or the sexual part of their relationship, again, something we evolve in. If we're still, and I'm challenging the folks who have been sitting somewhere for a while, think about this. If you're still having sex the same way in year 20 that you were having in year 1, God bless you. But let me say this. If you're with somebody who's okay with that, then fine, you're aligned. But most folks, just like the emotional part and the intellectual part and the vocational part, most folks are growing and evolving. And a lot of times people are not aligned that way. We don't see sex as a journey. We see sex as just something that you kind of do. It just kind of happens. But just like every other area of your relationship and your marriage, the sexual part of your relationship deserves some attention and some negotiating as well. So you need to talk about that alignment. Are you up to, or do you see sex as something that we improve on, that we continue to try new things, that we are exploratory, that we are creative, that we are open minded? Or is sex something that just kind of happens when we happen to be in the bed at the same time? That's a real conversation. And that speaks to alignment, not compatibility. Because compatibility, we might be compatible in terms of being able to satisfy each other. But if the alignment isn't there, at some point that compatibility can be reneged. You ought to get it in the morning. Spiritual alignment. Spiritual alignment kind of goes along with the emotional. Again, do we see even the end of our lives the same way? Do we have a similar view on where we're headed? Right? What is the purpose of having a belief system? What purpose does that serve in my life? Does it look the same way? I remember when I was on dating websites, and I've given up on them now. I can't do it. It's not worth the coins for me. But when I was on the dating websites, that was one of the first questions I would ask is, tell me about your relationship with God. And I would always get, those of you who have followed me know what the 3 answers are. The first one would be they would tell me what church they went to. The second answer would be, I really don't want to talk about anything that personal with somebody that I don't know. And then the third answer, and there was only a few people that could give an answer or provide an answer, that their relationship with God was a very real one. They talked to God all the time, first name basis, etc. It was instilled in them. That was perfect alignment for me because I believe, right, that your spirituality is something that's housed within yourself. Has nothing to do with a denomination, has nothing to do with the church that you associate with, nor is it something personal. No, it's nothing personal. My spirituality is just as what? Transparent as my name is on a piece of paper. So I need somebody in my life who believes that same way, right? So as we go, which means we may join a church together, we may not. We may minister together, we may minister in certain ways because of how spirituality is aligned in my life. What do I look as? And people who don't have that alignment at some point hit a wall. And I see it so much in the church. Again, a whole nother show I could do just on that spiritual alignment. and how lack of spiritual alignment can break up a couple or bring you to an expected end, because it's just a matter of time if the alignment isn't there. So people who are compatible in most areas but lack alignment affects the longevity of the relationship. Without alignment, a couple lacks the flexible structure to endure internal and external changes, meaning there's things that's going to happen outside that relationship or that marriage. But if we're solid, we're headed in the same direction, we can do what? We can bob and weave together. But if you're here and I'm there and something happens, boom. Not only is there space to get in between us, you're probably going to handle it this way and I'm going to handle it that way. Relationship is cooked. All right. So think about travel. I talked about the will alignment earlier, but even traveling with somebody. Have you remember MapQuest? You remember MapQuest before we started using GPS? People would have all the printed directions out. And it was nothing worse than getting in a car with somebody. They had one set of directions and you had another set. But we're trying to get to the same place. What happens? All kinds of arguments, all kinds of confusion, tension, all of that. We need to be heading in the same direction. There needs to be some communication about how we're going to do that. Probably needs to happen before we leave the house. Or what about people that you travel with? And I've talked to a couple people about this, which is why I started traveling alone. Some folks you can't travel with. Why? Because they have different trajectories for what vacationing is or what the purpose of a trip is. So, for example, for me, I'm not trying to be on a set schedule on a vacation because I do that every day of the year. So on vacation, I want a loose schedule. Like there might be certain things that we have tickets for, then I'm locked into those times. Otherwise, I'm going to get up when I feel like getting up and I'm going to bed when I feel like going to bed, which is probably on the plane. Sleep on the plane, you have your fun while you're on your trip. But that calls for alignment. So I only travel with people who travel that same way. The people who are stuck on schedules, they stay here in Chicago. I'll see you when I get back. But I only travel for people who travel similarly. They're on the same path, right, of joy, getting on and off that plane. So which one is most important? What conclusion did you come to? Is it compatibility or is it alignment? I hope you came to the conclusion that it's both. So compatibility will get you together, but alignment is what keeps you together. How about that? So compatibility will get you together. That'll help two people form a union or form a relationship. But that alignment is what keeps you all moving forward. You can fight any battle if you have alignment. Internal battles, external battles, just the change of over time, you can do that with alignment. You have to have some self-awareness and some empathy for both of those. Got to. I wish there was another way, but that's what I found out. Again, for those who have sat on the couch and the couches that I have sat on. And so that for right now, for me, I had to go back to my list. So what is most important for me? Somebody who's going in the same direction. And I'll follow them, man. Some people say, would you date somebody out of town? I have. Those are some of the best relationships I've had. So absolutely. I'll go out of town, out of state, out of the country. We're going in the same direction. Absolutely. But compatibility won't get us there. It has to be alignment. So do your homework, folks. Do your homework as you're dating. And even those of you who are already booed up and married, sit down and have these hard conversations. Are we still going in the same direction? And if we're not, how do we get back on the track of getting there? What do we need to do with our GPS? What kind of directions do we need to change so we can get back on the same page? right? And move in the same direction. Work that compatibility. Go back to the beginning. What brought you together? What are things about the yin and the yang that brought you all together? Maximize that and figure out your alignment. Get aligned, okay? Get aligned, get lined up. That's what you're listening for. That's what you're looking for if you're trying to get something that's going to last. I hope this was helpful to you. It was helpful to me. It made me think about a whole lot of things from the past and also looking forward. So, if you want to talk more about it, you know where to find me on Facebook and Instagram on the couch with Dr. Kim. You can send me an inbox if you want to set up a time to talk about your stuff or just to give me feedback about the podcast. I'm always open to that. If you're a woman and you're looking for a space to talk about these things openly, honestly, and transparently, you're welcome to join my group on Facebook, Love and Life According to Dr. Kim. It's about 2,000 women in there where we talk about relationships and love 24/7. We do it real and we do it raw. So until compatibility, getting to know, yep. So until we meet again next week, I'm not even going to tell you what we're talking about next week. I think I'm just doing trending topics next week. But yeah, I have a guest coming up in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. I've got some really great people coming up over the summer. So stay tuned for that. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel on the couch with